Tropical Storm Debby forms, hurricane warnings issued on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 4th. So we have a new tropical storm. In fact, we have two. Daniel formed in the eastern Pacific yesterday or earlier on, and Debby formed on Saturday evening in the Atlantic and is now heading up towards the coast of Florida, likely to become a hurricane. 30 storms have formed so far this year, Debby being the latest. There it is. We've also tagged another area of interest for later on next week, which could develop in the southwest Caribbean Sea and head towards the Yucatan. But Debby is heading up towards Florida. We'll be looking at that in a lot more detail in a minute. Carlotta, still a Category 1 hurricane, peaked earlier on and it's probably on a weakening trend now. Daniel there staying quite weak and stalling in place. And two areas of interest to the east there, we're giving 50% chance each because we really just can't tell which one is going to become the dominant system. Looks like either one that does it will form. And this area of interest in the Western Pacific here, 20% chance still at this point off the Northern Mariana Islands. It will be drifting towards the north-northeast there. North Indian Ocean still has a prominent disturbance inland, looks very much like a strong tropical cyclone if we're being honest. It is well inland over India. Elsewhere, not too much going on across the Bay of Bengal or Arabian Sea. And in the southwest Indian Ocean we have several clouds and cloud formations active there, but not too much to talk about in terms of tropical activity. Just a few little disturbances near the Seychelles and off towards the Cocos Keeling Islands. So the strongest storm that's active right now is Carlotta. We've put it down to 75 mile per hour winds. It looks like it is weakening substantially. It's just lost its eye. 684 kilometers from Isla Clarion moving away. 1538 from San Diego. 3513 from Hawaii. 3821 from Honolulu. And 3967 from Kauai. So a long way to go if it's ever going to get to those islands, and odds are it won't. Completely out at sea. And then of course we've got the threatening storm, which is Tropical Storm Debby. Hurricane warning for Suwannee River to Ochlockonee River, Florida. It is currently 121 kilometers from Havana, 155 from Key West, 315 from Cape Coral, 361 from Miami, and 451 from Tampa. Tropical storm warning for the Florida Keys and for other parts of the Bend region of Florida as well, where we're expecting that landfall to occur in less than 48 hours. Early hours of Monday morning appear to be the most likely time for that potential landfall. Well, here is imagery, first of all, of Hurricane Carlotta. It had a decent eye earlier, and as you can see on this latest imagery, it has vanished. It is looking a very lot more disheveled compared to what it was looking like earlier in the day. It still has that eye feature visible, and here is Debby throwing up large amounts of convection on its southern side, and the rotation's improved. All of it has improved dramatically over the course of today, and we could be on the threshold of rapid intensification as we move on over the next couple of days. Let's hope not, but at the moment there doesn't seem to be much stopping it. Here is imagery, and you can see how Carlotta has degraded in those last few hours. Its complete structure there getting much worse. It was looking quite well at the start there, but just a few hours later, and it is now looking really quite poorly, and we expect potentially quicker weakening to occur now. It will lose hurricane status later this evening. Here is Daniel. Well, Was it ever a tropical storm? That's one question. National Hurricane Center weren't fully sure. They went with it, and I'm not fully sure either looking at this imagery, but it blew up quite a few areas of convection there. Another flare up just then, but either way, it is a weak tropical storm officially right now, and that's expected to remain the case. They're expecting a 45-mile-per-hour peak, but it is partially exposed right now with that center there in the middle of that convection. Here's the progression of Debby throughout the day, and you can see just how that cloud cover has massively gone on the uptrend, even more discernible as we look at the enhanced infrared imagery. It is still a little bit disorganized, but as it pushes on northwestwards, it is getting easier to track. Microwave imagery looks quite impressive as well, and I think it won't be long until we get a good structure on this storm as it passes by the Keys. There's some radar imagery showing that rotation as well, looking quite decent. Still plenty of room for improvement, but I think we could be looking well towards hurricane status fairly soon. Well, I say fairly soon, in a day or two. Now this is an area of interest, 91W. There's Daitojima on the left hand side there. I'm not sure what happened with that imagery, something very strange. And this is 92W in the Western Pacific. Not too much going on with this. Really can't see very much reason why that is an invest, but there it is nonetheless. And in a minute we should be looking at the other invest in the Eastern Pacific, 96E. I think this is the one. And that is gradually heading west-northwestwards. We're looking out for potential development from this one, starting to look a little bit better on that imagery. Still a long way to go. Here's a view from the east coast of the United States. Tons of severe thunderstorms blowing up across the east coast this evening, and you could see why looking at that imagery. And then again, this rapid progression of Debby in the last few hours. A quick look at it there, and this is the east coast. I keep saying east coast, it's the west coast of Africa, eastern Atlantic, a few little storms there. Eastern Pacific, look at that, tons of disorganized chaos there. Two systems vying to become that next storm right near each other. They're going to collide. And then you've got Carlotta there now in the middle of this picture, and Daniel towards the bottom left. In the Western Pacific, there is a massive monsoonal looking thing there. It almost looks like a tropical cyclone, but nothing really going on with that right now. And looking at the Indochina region again, big convection going on over central India now from a tropical cyclone looking feature, and that is gradually pushing off towards the west right now. Sea surface temperatures are still very warm along the coast of Mexico in the Eastern Pacific. For Carlotta though, those temperatures are dropping now, just about to drop below the 26 degrees Celsius threshold. It's better for Daniel, around 28 degrees, and for the other area of interest, similar. Look at the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Florida, off Tampa Bay, over 30 degrees Celsius, pushing 32 degrees even. Extremely warm temperatures there for Debby. Western Pacific, extremely warm temperatures as well for huge parts of the ocean there. The Philippine Sea extending up towards Japan, large parts of the Japanese coastline with good sea surface temperatures. And the North Indian Ocean region is looking relatively okay as well, 28 to 29 degrees Celsius generally across the Arabian Sea, the Bay of Bengal and the Eastern Arabian Sea. The west is still a bit cooler though. Compared to normal, the sea surface temperature anomalies are well above average over most of the Atlantic. The main development region is around 3 degrees above normal, as is the area where Debby is tracking into. Off Atlantic Canada, it's extremely warm, 5 degrees above average. Eastern Pacific looking decent, even where Carlotta is compared to normal, but ahead of that other system too. Westpac, warm as well in the tropics, but extremely warm in the subtropics. Oceanic heat content still yields very high values across large parts of the Philippine Sea, extending up towards Taiwan, where Gamey was a couple of weeks ago, and off the coast of Mexico as well. Again, those little hot spots there in the Eastern Pacific, not as prolific as the actual sea surface temperatures though. The Atlantic, looking at some very high amounts of oceanic heat content, but not near Florida. It's a little bit further out to sea over the Gulf of Mexico, and of course near Cuba. Debby's actually over a little spot right now, but it will be exiting that shortly. So let's see what the GFS thinks about this one now. Well, it is forecasting a borderline hurricane landfall. It's actually shifted westwards there. It's quite close to Apalachicola, and then moving northeastwards, then back off the coast, strengthens again, gets close to hurricane status again as it shoves itself back inland near Savannah, Georgia. So 2 near hurricane peaks according to that GFS model. And if you want to know what the ICON model is doing, well, it is calling for a strong category 2 or 3 for North Carolina. In the Eastern Pacific, we've got Carlotta continuing off towards the west-northwest. Foregone conclusion there, Daniel, as well. And then that next system, you saw both of those systems vying for the development of that very broad cyclone. Eventually, both of their energies combine to put that together into that storm. But it is the western system that does it, according to that latest GFS model. And off it goes, off towards the west-northwest, very broad but not that strong. Now, looking at rainfall expectations for Debby, of course, well, we are expecting quite high amounts over large parts of the southeastern United States. It's actually trended down slightly, but we are still looking at some significant values above 12 inches, especially along the coast of Georgia and the southernmost point of South Carolina. 16 to 17 inches there, 14 inches near the original landfall location in the Bend region of Florida, and potentially getting up to 12 inches in parts of North Carolina as well. Just southeast of Atlanta there, 6 inches, and around Jacksonville we're looking at similar amounts there too. In the longer range, you'll see that potential system forming in the Western Caribbean affects Belize there, moving through the Yucatan and eventually making a run towards Texas. So that potential scenario is back on the table. Just by the time we get to day 10, that's a tropical storm making landfall south of Houston. Another East Pacific storm forming there quite quickly as well and moving quite quickly off towards the west, eventually west-northwest. But following that Texas storm, there it is. TS landfall a little bit further west of Galveston, quite close to Beryl's landfall actually. Further out to sea, we've got what's going on over here in the Eastern Pacific with this tropical storm continuing westwards. That's that big one that we were watching earlier on. It actually survived for quite a bit longer, northeast of Hawaii there for a little time. But not much else going on in the Eastern Pacific in that long range period. You can scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Forster Team merch store, where you can take a look at all our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request at any time, as well as our Stillwing Verhone t-shirts, which are still available because that storm still hasn't formed yet in that Central Pacific region. And it won't in the Scilly range either. We have that storm making landfall in Texas, moving north and then northeast, and in the Eastern Pacific possibly one or two other little systems trying to form. Yes, there's a tropical storm there, just moving off the coast of Mexico off towards the west. The Atlantic quiet after that next storm by the looks of things, and maybe another little system in the Eastern Pacific right at the very end of that 16-day run. And whilst that's happening, the Western Pacific, the GFS throwing up a spanner in the works here off the coast of Japan, a very quick forming system in that subtropical zone and becoming a typhoon no less, before making landfall there in central Japan on the island of Honshu and then moving northeastwards. So that would be rather interesting if that happened, but it is extremely long range and I would not lend any credibility to that one at the moment. But could that be a sign of things to come? Well, let's look backwards, and this was a sign of things that really did happen in a big way. It was August 4th, 1962, when Opal was making its run to Category 5 status, which it achieved by the end of the day, and it was just about to arrive in Taiwan, one of the most powerful landfalls there, Category 5 peak. We also had what was left of Nora, which was moving off Japan, off towards the east-northeast, well out over the North Pacific. Good picture there of Opal, at least for that time period, on this day many years ago. What's that, 62 years to the day. Well, back to today then, we're watching these 3 storms that are currently active. The next name now in the Atlantic though is Ernesto. In the Eastern Pacific it's Amelia, and in the Central Pacific it is Hone. So Atlantic and East Pacific level again here, both with 4 storms each. West Pacific also with 4 storms. The next name is Maria, and in the North Indian Ocean it will be Asna. 30 storms now so far this year, still puts us below average for the time of year, but of course we've had some real shockers, haven't we, out of the storms that have formed. In the Australian region, the next name is Robin, the Southwest Indian Ocean is Ansha, and in the South Pacific it's Pitta. That's it from today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We're back to the 0Z time slot for now. We'll see you again tomorrow.
Become an ultimate fan today.